Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Navis Nobilite video. Today, I am starting a new series of instructional and tactical videos for the more sweaty player. Specifically, those people who want to actually play Battlefield Gothic at not a casual level, but at a higher level, a more I guess the better way to put it is vicious level. They want to play this game. Maybe they're going into a tournament environment or their local meta is particularly competitive. These are people who probably have players who are vastly overconfident in their abilities, and they need to teach them a little lesson on who the actual best of BFG is in their local community. Rest assured that I will convey to you all of the knowledge that I have for the more competitive element of the game, but also understand that there are many, many different opinions on this matter. So you may want to ask around in the Discord channel, which is linked down below. But also definitely, spend your time. Learn what works best for you in your particular tactical set. I'm going to be describing it from the tactics that I have been able to accumulate over the last 15 plus odd years. So, by all means, learn, listen, enjoy, but recognize that my opinion is not the only one. And I'll try to give anecdotal examples of other things that I have seen in the sweaty domains, the high effort domains of Battlefield Gothic. And today we're going to start with, predictably, the Imperial Navy. Now, please understand for all who are watching, these videos are not lore-based. These videos are tactically and rules-based. I'm not going to be concerned about what is right and what is wrong, what would actually happen, or particularly the feelings of my opponent in these videos. My interest here is to win. My interest here is to crush my opponent and make sure that they learn their lesson about talking to, smart about how good they think they are. So, moving on to that, let's move into the rules. Now, there are only two truly viable, high effort, high competition, or, again, high sweat Imperial Navy fleets out there. Now, that is the Gothic Sector Fleet List, the original Blue Book. Yes, that's right. The oldest fleet list in the book is the most sweaty. And Segmentum Solar Armageddon Sector. So we're going to start by casting aside certain elements of our fleet list. Because when you are going in and you are going in to win, there are a couple of different priorities that we have here. For the Imperial Navy, our greatest, most undisputed priority is maximum number of ships on the board, balanced with maximum amount of firepower on the board. Okay? Now, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, oh, he's going to talk about the 7 Dominator list. And my answer to that is no. The 7 Dominator list is one of the easiest fleets to destroy. It is incredibly easy to beat. Why? Because it's a one-trick pony, and we're really trying to avoid one-trick ponies because our opponent is very likely an experienced player as well and know exactly how to deal with that problem. Pro tip, how do you beat the 7 Dominator list? You get close and take away their Nova Cannon ability to fire at any decent range. Go in, board them, shoot them at close range. Dominators, while they have decent firepower, are vulnerable at short range. Weapons batteries are only good in certain circumstances. So what does that mean? Well, if we're going to be going based on the Gothic Sector list, the best possible build that you can actually make is what I like to call a no man's land list. Effectively, what you're trying to do is you're trying to turn the board into something that will crit your enemy all the way down to their destruction before they ever get close to you. Now, obviously, this will not work with everyone and everything, but the vast majority of the enemies that you will be facing will very likely not do well against this list. Now, I will mention the fleets that you have to be the most careful of versus least careful of. Some of these fleets are going to be particularly easy for you to deal with. Some of them are going to be unusually hard. But realize, tournament environment, you're going to be dealing with people who are just as sweaty as you. So, good luck. Now, there are ships and there are command options that we have to discard right off the bat. First things first,
High-level points admirals, never take them. They are too expensive for what you need. A LD8 fleet admiral is perfect for our purposes. 50 points is nice and cheap. You get a standard LD8. That'll get you through most games with very good odds on passing leaderships because the enemy's going to be on special orders, and that's going to make you a de facto LD9. Okay, so don't waste your points here. Now, down here in the reroll section, don't waste your points if you don't have room for it. Okay, if you can sacrifice getting one extra reroll so you can, shoehorn in just one more ship, ships always are better than rerolls. Okay, a reroll will not keep you in the game if enemies are shooting up your ship. Okay, another cruiser very well may. Okay, moving on to battle cruisers. Both the Mars and the Overlord are viable in sweaty matches. In tournament environments, the Overlord far more so than the Mars, but the Mars has very valuable elements to it that we will get into later. Now, going into cruisers, your viable options are the Dictator, the Dominator, Gothic in certain circumstances, and the Lunar in certain circumstances. But the most important cruisers are going to be these two. Okay? The Dictator and the Dominator. Now, why? Well, the Dictator is already a ridiculously OP cruiser. It has incredible firepower thanks to the torpedo and launch bay combo. And the Dominator is the cheapest Nova cannon in your arsenal. Okay? You will be wanting to bring the Dominator as our source of a Nova cannon. All right? So, I did make up a presumptive list. Let me quickly pop in the calculator here for all of your viewing pleasure. Boop. Okay, here we have our calculator. So, the presumptive list, well, first things first, we have to have 2 battle cruisers. We need battle cruisers first. We are going to start with our Overlord, okay? And the Overlord, I'm going to quickly double check if I'm here. The upgrade for the Overlord, which is 100% essential. Remember, it's a 15-point upgrade, and it's well worth it too. Okay, back to the Overlord. So that is 235 plus 235 plus 50 for a commander. That's our baseline. That's what we're starting with. Okay, now we need standard cruisers. We need dictators because we do not want to be dominated in the ordnance phase. Okay, here we go at 960. Now, 190 plus 190. Boom. Okay, we're at 1340. We have 160 points left. We have 6 cruisers, which is not too shabby. Okay, but what we also critically have, launch capacity 8, which is considered broadly to be at the 1500 point level, bare minimum for maintaining a competitive ordnance phase. We have the Dominators and their torpedoes. We have the Overlords and their torpedoes. We have the Overlord at extra long range with decent land support, but critically what we have is a high volume of fire weapons battery that does not care about range. You will always typically be able to throw dice across the table. And we have our Dominators, which are our Nova Cannons. And rest assured, those Nova Cannons are well appreciated. Now, I'm going to quickly go to the Dominator to double check one thing. All the way down to the Dominator. Okay. Now, one important thing right here. We could, if we needed to, reduce our points of these ships by 5 points. By every shave of point is important because 340 is much better when it's 330. That's 170 points. Even more room to play around with. And in all honesty, these ships aren't really supposed to get close. Now, I am going to be keeping these ships at their normal firepower for the sake of this list, but you may find that there's a better purpose for these 10 valuable points elsewhere. Okay, so we're going to go back to the main list. Now we have sitting here 160 points to play with. What can we use that on? Well, we can grab, say, a couple of Cobra destroyers. Cobras are very, very useful. They are Well, I didn't mention the sweaty element of the escorts. Really, your two sweaty options here are the sword and the cobra. The sword is just the most reliable of all of the escorts in the Imperial Navy, and the cobra is dirt cheap, super fast, and comes with a very, very respectable torpedo salvo. In this particular scenario, we're looking at about, I think, 5. Yeah, 50? We're looking at 5 Cobras. That's a good number. That's a strength 10 torpedo salvo, and if used properly, that's a very, very healthy amount. And we can do this plus 10 points, go and give ram spikes to our dominators, because we know that those dominators will eventually get close, and if we're going to get close, we should really get close in a funny way. Please remember, maneuvers and navigation special orders do not affect our ordnance. So, if the enemy gets gets within ramming range, we should be considering doing an all-ahead pull solely so we can ram, then dump torpedoes, and then dump bombers. Do a maximum amount of damage if they get close. Okay, so how do we use this fleet? This fleet is a scenario of attrition over distance. We do not want to get close to the enemy at all. We want the enemy to come to us. We want them to suffer the whole way there. Okay, so our overlords should be sitting abeam to the enemy, and just lobbing firepower at anything that gets within that 60 centimeter range band. The Dominator should be launching bombers and fighters to tie up, well, mostly bombers, to tie up the enemy ordnance, force them to launch nothing but fighters to stop your bombers from wreaking havoc, and, occasionally dropping a torpedo when it's opportunistic. And of course, our I keep on mixing up the Dictator and the Dominator. The Dominator is there to shoot Nova Cannons. Now, it is very important that if you're going to be shooting your Dominator's Nova Cannon, okay? Did I mix up Dictator and Dominator? Let's start with these. Either way, you know what I mean. Our carriers should be launching, tying up the ordnance phase. The Dominator needs to be firing their Nova Cannons every round and moving as slowly as they can. Also, while not breaking up your fleet coherency. Nothing should be left behind here, okay? The important thing to note is that when you are firing your Nova Cannons, you need to know what you're firing at and why, okay? The important element of this fleet, because we only have 6 cruisers, and that's a average amount for a 1,500 point list, is we need to make sure that whatever enemy comes at us, it is an enemy that we can deal with in the 60 to 45 to 30 range bands. So anything that is coming at us that is a significant threat should be getting those Nova Cannons in their face every single round. Now, remember, we're firing 2 Nova Cannons. That gives us a roughly 66% chance of direct hitting with one of them. Okay, it's a 1 in 3 shot for each shot. Pick your targets wisely. Things that you should be prioritizing. Any ship that is specifically good at annihilating a Imperial Navy ship. So any ship that has a lot of lances. So if you're playing against Chaos, you should definitely not allow things like Acherons or Repulsives or Hades to live. Also, things to consider. You can drop that template anywhere you want. You can place that hole over more than one ship's base. Okay? You should definitely be going for multiple ship direct hits. Another thing to consider, with 2 Nova Cannons, if you're really lucky and nail the 1 in 3 direct hit, and you drop it on an escort squadron that are base to base, you potentially have wiped out that escort squadron if the enemy doesn't brace for impact. Also, always remember, you brace for impact before you roll to scatter. Okay? If you can fake an enemy out and make them brace, even if you miss, you are now in the initiative. You have the advantage. Forcing an enemy to brace for impact early will affect the entire game. Alright? So, this sweaty list, this very sweaty list, is the kind of thing that I usually bring in when people say Imperial Navy are easy to beat. And this fleet has not failed me. It is right out of the old blue book, it is very, very easy to build, and it's very, very easy to use. With a little bit of experience, you could probably take on most enemies. Also, now about the Cobras. What's the purpose of these Cobras? Now, a lot of people will say, keep it on the side, move it in as a flanking force and torpedo in the side, and that's not a bad option. But in this particular scenario, I would actually keep these Cobras pretty close to the main cruiser formation. I don't want these Cobras shot at. I don't want the enemy to be distracted by these Cobras. I need that Strength 10 torpedo for when the enemy starts getting ships close to me. I want the enemy to regret making the decision to come across the table, because once they do so, they're going to have their ships usually in a formation that is vulnerable to a torpedo salvo. Okay? These suckers are a kind of a hidden right hook. I want this to be it's a sucker punch, actually. I don't want the enemy to know they're there. Okay? It's actually reasonably viable to take the Widowmaker option on these guys to get that little bit of a leadership buff to make sure that you have those reloads that you need. So, nice and sweaty, okay? Nice and competitive, high level competitive fleet. I enjoy this fleet a great deal. Now, what are these things good against and what are they bad against? They're really good against, this is a really good fleet against Eldar, simply because they have the Overlord, and the Overlords are pure poison to an Eldar player. And they're really good against Chaos. They're really good against a lot of other things. They're a little bit weak against Tyranids because they don't really have concentration of fire of bodies. Really, they nothing in this fleet is really expendable. In my other Imperial Navy fleet, which is a lot more casual, I have at least one cruiser that I can use as a sacrifice if necessary. This fleet, not so much. And this fleet is particularly weak against orcs, which I know is a weird statement, but yeah, because of the low concentration of lances in this fleet, orcs are particularly difficult to defeat with this. Also, other Imperial Navy, but usually the Imperial Navy really wants to get a beam to you, so you actually have certain advantages over them. All right, that is the first Imperial Navy list. Let's go down to the Segmentum Solar Armageddon sector list. As we scroll down, Armageddon sector list. Now, this is a very different sort of list because we have different ships at our disposal. We have, of course, our ever appreciated Fleet Admiral at 50 points. But we do not have access to the Overlord. We have the Armageddon. Okay? Now, if the world were a better place, these guys would be a little bit cheaper, but they simply are not, sadly, because a double Armageddon, double Mars fleet would be positively hilarious. But unfortunately, we don't have that kind of access. I will get into a fleet involving the Mars battlecruiser here in a moment, but right now let's get on to the top tier sweatiness. The real advantage, the overwhelming benefit to this fleet is the fact that you may include one battlecruiser in your fleet for every cruiser. This is an astronomically incredible and awesome ability. So, and we also have the Endeavor and the Endurance and the Defiant. Now, when it comes to sweaty options, Endeavor, Endurance are high competitive. Defiant is actually pretty low. They're nice little ships, but we have better carriers at our disposal, and we shouldn't be wasting our points on getting up to launch capacity 8 in a ship that already has extreme restrictions on what we can take it as. The Armageddon, of course, is there. It's big, it's mean, it's what we want. We want as many Armageddons as we can get our hands on. It's a positively amazing battlecruiser, and yes, we're going to be basically building our fleet around this. And again, unfortunately, our battleships are simply not viable. The escorts and our options here, again, notice how we don't have Cobras as an option, which kind of unfortunately restricts us down to either a rapid strike vessel Cobra, which is too expensive, or the sword. And notice we don't even have the sword. We have the falchion. Now, the falchion is a great little escort, but it is not the competitive edge that we really need it to be. So let's start building a fleet. So first things first, we need the bare minimum ships to get our Armageddon. So our first things first, our commander. We need 220 points for the bare minimum. So I'm going to say that's an Endeavor and an Endurance. Okay. And now we have to, so that's that. And now we have our Armageddon. Now, the question has been asked of me, do I bring a Nova Cannon on the Armageddon? The answer is no. This fleet will not have any Nova Cannons in it because the real purpose of this fleet is to put boot to ass, not to attrit the enemy. And unfortunately, because the Armageddon's focus is not strictly at that 60 centimeter range band, it is in fact a 45 to 60 range band. This cruiser does need to close somewhat on the enemy. And for maximum firepower, it needs to be close enough that its batteries matter. So if we are moving close to the enemy, it's better that we have torpedoes, which are just more reliable as a weapon in this particular scenario. So we have 505 right there. We have to double that up. Times 2 minus 50. We only need one commander. We're at 960 points. All right. Now, we have now an Endeavor, an Endurance. We have 2 Endeavors, 2 Endurances, 2 Armageddon. We need carrier support. So, 440. Okay, that's our two Dictator class cruisers. So now we have our carrier capacity sitting right there. So we currently have 4 light cruisers, 2 standard cruisers, and 2 battle cruisers. That's a lot of ships, right? And then we have 100 points to spare. Now we can go down here and look at our options for escort. Now we have, again, not the best options. If we only had access to the Cobra, our beautiful Cobra, but we simply do not. Now we could take a couple of Nova class frigates. There's nothing wrong with taking some Space Marine stuff, but we could. Yeah, this is unfortunate. We are unfortunately in this particular scenario running into one of the great problems with this particular fleet. We don't have the best options for low-cost ships. We've been kind of spoiled by these Endeavors and Endurances. So where else can we throw our points? Now, we could go up here to the leadership section and increase our leadership of our admiral to LD9. That's 50 points. Why don't we try doing that? Commit a little bit of heresy here, giving us 50 points to remain, and maybe an extra re-roll that gives us 1475. And we can throw 20 points on for ram spikes. This fleet is not as sweaty as the prior one, but you have a lot of cruisers in this fleet. It is a fleet that really should not be underestimated, and a lot of people will consider, how am I supposed to use all of these light cruisers? Now, the Endeavor and the Endurance are excellent little ships. Let's go down and actually have a look at those ships. Okay, the Endeavor, come on. Why is it taking me here? Weird. See, very strange. Okay, well, we'll go and find it the old-fashioned way. Here we go. Dominator, Tyrant. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Here we go. Okay, the Endeavor Light Cruiser. Now, a lot of people like to use these Endeavors to increase this Prow Armor to 6 up for no additional cost. We will not be doing this, and there's a very important reason why. The Endeavor Light Cruiser and the Endurance Light Cruiser are not like your normal light cruiser. They're not like the Dauntless. The Dauntless is designed to be prow-facing. The weapons batteries on its port and starboard are there mostly for show. We never really use them, and for good reason. They're only strength 4. However, a broadside out of an Endeavor is strength 8. That is a huge broadside for such a small ship. If you combine your Endeavors and Endurances into a single squadron of 4, you are looking at a broadside strength of, let's see, that'll be 8, 16 plus 4 more. A broadside of strength 20. And then 4 lances on top of that. That will effectively erase any ship that you get that broadside off on. And if you have this 6-up armored prow, you're going to not be able to take advantage of the 90-degree turn. And you need that, because when the enemy comes close to you, and they will, you definitely need to be able to move your light cruisers forward, turn them 90 degrees, move them right in front of the enemy ship, and light them up. So, unlike a lot of the ways people use these ships, I'm not using them as a meat shield for other bigger ships. I am using them as their own distinct squadron, and boy, oh boy, do they do that effectively. The amount of firepower out of a squadron of Endeavors and Endurances will absolutely astonish your opponent if you're able to get the maneuver off. And along with this, you have 2 Armageddons, which have, if you squadron them, which I typically do, it's a strength 12, 45 centimeter weapons battery and a strength 8 lance. That outshoots the Apocalypse battleship, and it's on a more maneuverable platform that has torpedoes on it. And then, of course, we have the ever-present Dictator for your carrier support. This fleet is really good when encountering very aggressive fleets like Chaos. This fleet is very, very good against Necrons. It's very, very good against Orcs, and to an extent Tyranids, because you have a lot of little expendable ships that if they decide to board, you can just blow up and annihilate all of their escorts or lighter ships. You have chaff that you can use. Now, conversely, this fleet is particularly weak against Eldar, because there's not as much weapon battery at good range, but it can hold its own. So, these have been 2 examples of high competitive tactic Imperial Navy. All right. Again, remember the rule. We want to prioritize number of ships over special rule. We want to prioritize the elements of selective fire and killing important ships in the enemy fleet. So let me get be specific. What do I mean by an important ship? Your priorities should begin with, I mentioned this before, I definitely did. Priority begins with ships that are of a particular threat to your fleet. Anything that can annihilate another cruiser immediately, or that's the first thing that gets within range. 2, enemy carriers. You want to make sure those enemy carriers are braced for impact or destroyed for the majority of the game, so your carriers can do their work. Okay? So, realizing that not a lot of carriers tend to be close up front, this particular fleet may have a little bit more of a problem with that, but at the same time, this particular fleet has the firepower that allows them to destroy almost anything that comes in range. If a orc fleet starts moving in on this, if you're able to pull off a lock-on with your light cruisers and the Armageddons, you will erase orc ships every round. And you will erase them at ranges that the orcs do not have an answer for. Okay? And because, again, your focus is beyond the Abeam, long-range battery ships like the stuff you get out of Chaos aren't going to do so well against you. You will have the advantage. So remember, high-priority targets, if you have Nova Cannons, focus fire on them. If not, wipe out escort squadrons or focus on carriers. You have the durability to survive in close quarters combat with most brawler ships like the Murder or the Carnage. Focus your fire. Kill the enemy if you can, but if you can't, be satisfied with just crippling them. Okay? Your priority thing should be crippling all of his entire fleet. If you fire at a target with one ship, okay, and you cripple it, you don't have to pay as much attention to it unless it's a target of opportunity. Go on, cripple the next ship. Try to force your opponent to disengage, okay? Or, if you spot a target that's of particular value, wreck it as best you can. Like his command ship, where the most points are sunk. Alright? I may do an adjoining video of this, demonstrating actual fleet formation for the high competitive. But right now we're really talking about the philosophy of the Imperial Navy and being competitive. Now, why not Segmentum Obscurus? Why not the other Imperial Navy fleet? Segmentum Obscurus is a fun fleet, but it doesn't really have. You can do more things better with the Armageddon sector, and the Grand Cruisers on the Imperial side just aren't good enough to really justify being competitive, which is sad because they're a lot of fun, but they simply aren't competitive enough to be effective. The all of the other, ancillary fleets are all take away more than they give you, so there's really no point in using them in these high-end combats. Now, Baka can be competitive, and especially because you can reserve in a lot of stuff. The problem is Baka falls into the same problem of the Adeptus Mechanicus, which is their ships get very expensive as you kind of ladle on the benefit. Okay, and ultimately, just because you can reserve in carriers from other sources, you don't really have any real advantages over the other Imperial Navy fleets beyond the ability to increase your turret value, which is a points thing, and we don't really want to do that. All right. Well, anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all again in the next video.